Hi, Mark. So I'm Agnes. My full name is Agnes Baudry, and it's a French name because I am French. I was born there and lived most of my school years and university years. And then I moved to the UK, so all my working life has been here in the UK. And this is also where I've built my home, and I've got a family, so a British husband and two lovely young children. Who I am as well is I've got lots of friends across the country in the UK, because I've moved across the country a lot for work, and I've done lots of various different things. So at the moment, I work for the Cambridge University Press and Assessment Organisation, and my role is very much about building a team, bringing people together, about learning and development, about strategy as well. And so I like all these things, and all these themes have been in my career so far, played at various strengths. And so I have started coaching as well, because that aligns with all these sort of values of teamwork and helping people to develop and sort of express themselves in various ways. And I'm really enjoying it, and I think it's very rewarding for me, but it's the excitement of seeing people feeling proud of their achievements and of their progress, and I get a lot of energy from that. So this is me.
Excellent, thank you, Agnes. And of course, you're joined by the lovely Jon. Jon, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Mark. Thank you very much. So my name is Jon Coxhead. I also work at the organisation that Agnes has said. I've got into coaching recently as well, so I've been quite enjoying that. I think partly for me, I've always been a people person, so the idea of coaching has always been around. I've heard people talking about it, didn't know a lot about it, and then recently had some opportunities to get involved, and I kind of snapped the hand off, really. So here I am, coaching and enjoying it.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it, and hopefully you're going to enjoy today's conversation. As coaches, one of the things that I hear is this term called active listening, and hence this podcast is called The Active Listener. So for each of you, what does that term actually mean, and how do you see it in your practice?
So for me, active listening is listening actively, but basically the listening we all have in all of us, and potentially part of the things that people will have picked up on Jon, on me, is that, oh, what a great listener, and so we hear that feedback and we say, oh, maybe I can do something about it. And when you add the active, is that you become a lot more disciplined around that activity. It's not just the spontaneous, natural gift that we have to sort of pay attention to what the others are saying without necessarily interrupting them or wanting to put our ideas through. For me, there's an added stretch to that listening muscle, and it's about tuning out any voices that we might have, to really be present and focus on what the person is saying, to limit to really a minimum the input that we would have, either externally talking to that person in that moment, or internally with all these voices or thoughts that might pop in. So when we're in the listening mode, we're really present for that person. And in coaching, you've got various descriptions of it, and the things that I like also about this active listening is that it's listening to that whole person. So not just the words, but really taking in all the languages that we have. Like I've just noticed that I move my hands a lot, and so that would be part of, if I were to listen to myself, I would not just pay attention to the words, but I would see how animated my body language might be, or, you sometimes just sense energy. And I think that's what I get in active listening. It's it's further than the natural act, and the activity is that, because you really have to focus and be specific, but take the whole person.
And the word present that you've said, Agnes, a couple of times is something that I would certainly say is, and there's more. So people would imagine that I'm a good listener. But when you start getting into coaching and you read theories, you read into it, you realize that there's more than just listening, more than the act of listening, as you say. And, one of the parts is, I'd say on a basic, that there's a lot of distractions around nowadays. If you're working from home or coaching from home virtually, you will, the cat will walk by, there'll be a person knocking at the door to deliver, your Amazon parcel or whatever. So there's that element in terms of the physical and the distraction. But there's also the idea that you need to put all that aside, but then watch out for what the coachee is saying, the flailing of the arms, the quietness, the body language, which also is there. But it's really active listening to me is making sure that they have the space to talk and that you are letting them talk, but you're also listening and ready to pick up on the signals, the throwaway comments that mean something, and you're there. You are there. You're not thinking about West Ham winning the league or whatever. You're there thinking about, right, what can I do to help them?
Yeah, I like what you said about holding the space and holding space for silence as well. I would say is part of the active listening, and not rushing things through. So keeping that space and that time for the person to let their thoughts or their emotions sort of unfold, and not clog that space with you, essentially, or with me in that case.
I'd also say in terms of when you are listening, active or without, the idea of when you paraphrase back to a coachee, so they've said something, you say, let me summarize that in a certain way, and I think that you can do that, then gives the coachee the confidence that actually this person is listening to me, and it is a space that I can think, say things, and they are picking up and will listen to it. So I think the active listening then gives you that chance to say, actually, yeah, here I am, I am present, I'm here to support you. I've listened to you, look, here you go, this is what I think that you've said. And the amount of times that you have a coachee come back to you and say, oh, now you've said it out loud, is it really something that I'm thinking in that sort of way? And, then you get the silence, and then you can see what that means and the reflection that comes from that. So, active listening as well in terms of that summarizing and playing back, I think has always been important to me.
I love that you're putting the play it back as part of it, because indeed you can only do that in a way that's not distorted by you if you've been really sort of pure in your listening. And I completely relate to what you say, where a coachee says, oh wow, now that I've heard it play back, it sounds even bigger or more true or more in accordance with what I think. And when I started on my learning journey towards coaching, I thought, I need to be coached on various things. So that's a good experience to get at this point of my learning. And indeed, at the time, I found that this was one of the more powerful and helpful thing as a coachee when I was getting that playback. And I tend to be, expanding into many, many words. And then that person was just, coming back with just, yeah, this is what you said. And those were my words, but said by somebody else. It feels very different, and it's difficult to explain, but it really brings that clarity, and you feel that you through the coachee you've got that playback of yourself, but you listen to yourself with more trust if somebody else says it than if it's your inner voice that you constantly have in the background that you can sort of tune out because it's always there. So I love that you've put that in active listening as well. It is so important.
One thing that I do find at the start of when I began coaching, when I had that exact sort of sequence of events as it was playback. I was like, actually, I'm thinking like there was also a sense that then challenged my active listening, because in my mind, especially in the early days, I was thinking, oh yeah, I'm doing something really good. And then that throws you off, and you begin to think of, how great I am. I'm really doing well at this. So yeah, there are challenges, and that comes with experience and time. Where you put that away. You don't pat yourself on the back. You just carry on and move on. But yeah, that's one challenge that I had certainly at the start, where you felt things were going well. Your playback was good. You believed you was actively listening. You was proving it. But then you start to think, actually, I'm really good at it. But yeah, anyway, that's something I watch out for now.
That's really interesting. Thank you. It does sound to me, and I guess I would say that active listening is really like the bedrock of what we're doing, and the way you have described it, it's much more than just hearing. It's listening, and listening in its fullest sense in terms of the body language, perhaps even the unsaid things, the things that have not been said, have been omitted, which can give an indication of what's going on. I think also there's real power in actually providing a space for people to be heard, to be listened to, and as you were saying earlier about repeating back to them is acknowledgement of that. And often that in itself is a cathartic process for people to actually start thinking. What do you do if someone is sharing something that is not in line with perhaps the way you would see something? How do you manage the whole thing of being perhaps non-judgmental, given it's their time and their space? How do you both go about doing that?
I think if you start with the idea that with the active listening, you tune out yourself to give space to the person who's talking to fully express themselves. In that way, that sort of discipline, it's perhaps, and I'm not the best place to talk about it, but it's a bit like mindfulness. And so therefore, all these judgmental voices that you may have in you just fade out as well, because actually you're so absorbed and there's so much going on that you might put a distance from your distanciation. You're in there in the moment, so you wouldn't introduce too much of yourself ideally already in there. And then I guess it also comes to the type of person you are. And again, if you want to do coaching, I would guess that this is because of your view on others, humanity, or you can go as philosophical as you want. From a personal point of view, I just find variety interesting, exciting in the world, and I want to be exposed to a lot of various thoughts, ways of living, and so on, because the world is not a linear place and with a unique start and a unique end. And so for me it's really interesting to be open to listen to something different than what I might think. My opinions will be in my head. I can get to them at some point, but if I'm in the moment with that person, that's my opportunity to listen to them and what they have to say. And in 5 minutes, my brain will still be in my head, but they will have moved on. So I kind of want to be curious to what they have to say and not necessarily react by following my thoughts, because I can always get to them later. They'll be there.
In the coaching process, obviously, one of our main things in the contract is being non-judgmental as well. So, holding our coachees in universal positive regard. The chemistry session, I think that we would have had, broadly that, you don't have some sort of evil despot that you're going to chat to, I guess. That's one thing. But yeah, as you've said, Agnes, it's certainly the way that as it goes through, you put yourself to one side, as part of that active listening, you're giving them the space to discuss things, to say things out loud. And it is a safe space. They can say these things. And yeah, you can challenge, perhaps, that's an interesting viewpoint, tell me more about that. Maybe someone says something in, they can't articulate it properly, or they say something that they're not thinking about, so you can explore why they've said that. But I broadly agree, it's something that you just keep to one side, you put it in the back of your mind, you challenge if need be. but because of the safe space, let them explore, let them talk.
Something that we've discussed a few times together is also that when you're in a coaching session, you're not having a chat with your best friend or with a mate even. It's not meant to be that the coach and the coachee are in perfect alignment of everything. The coach agrees that they will serve the interest of the coachee, so that if the coachee have got some goals that they want to achieve, but they're in a bit of a muddle and they kind of need some help to get their thoughts or emotions in a way that they can process, then the coach will be there. But that's not to say that the coach is an unconditional cheerleader. The non-judgment goes both ways. We don't judge negatively, but we don't judge necessarily positively. It's the absence of judgment. Is you bring what you want to the table. We're here to help the coachee, but it's not to say that we would recommend that in a similar situation, that's the end for anyone and everyone. That's just the end the coachee has chosen for themselves. So that's what we support, not the story behind it or the what the goal actually is. We're supporting that process.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. So to a certain extent, we're talking about neutrality, aren't we? We're not saying yes or no in terms of positive or negative. I think one of the things I've noticed about that, again, there's real power in the fact that then allows people to find their voice, that they can sort of think through some ideas and share stuff. And it may actually be they vocalize something and think, actually, that's a load of rubbish. I don't really think that. But it provides that safe space to do so. One of the things that I've really noticed, both through coaching and generally just in life, is everyone does have something to say for themselves, something that's interesting, as long as they are given the opportunity to do so. And in part, that's kind of the motivation for doing this podcast, is providing the opportunity for people to have a voice and to share. Obviously, it isn't quite as confidential, depending on how many people listen. It's not quite as confidential as the coaching session. The other difference, of course, is that, and you made reference to this, Agnes, was about being goal orientated. So how do you go from listening to someone's heart often, or their emotion, their feeling, or what they want to do? How do you go from listening to that to helping crystallize and achieving a goal? What's the process that both of you would go through?
We started off in our coaching teaching looking at the GROW model, which everyone says, it's quite basic, but it will get you where you need to go. So, and in some discussion we've had, that's always been in the back of our mind, just despite new models and just growing in experience as a coach. And the better you get at coaching is due to the more people that you're coaching. It's that real life experience that gets you where you are. But I still think elements of the GROW model work for me in the sessions. Generally, a coach will come to you because they want to better themselves, they want to improve. So you already tick the box that they want to improve. So then you move on to what areas we're looking at. Often it might be career, for example. So broadly that's what you'll be looking at. So then you can start implementing some of the GROW model, but also just look at some wider objectives. What do you want to do? What's your where are you in 5 years' time, whatever it might be. So then you explore that. And then you might end up saying, I want to leave the company. I want to, set up my own business, whatever it might be. You then take that broad objective and look at the milestones, the stepping stones, as one of my coaches once said, there's a lot of steps to get to this end objective. So then you break it down into more manageable chunks, perhaps being fully aware that you're not going to set up your own business tomorrow. You might do. But if you need certain skills or you need to do certain things, what are the precursors to get to that goal? So what I generally work with coaches is to start, splitting things up into, more achievable chunks, I would say. And then, you might have 2 or 3, you might have 10, you might have 20. And then you start looking, what are our short-term, quick wins, the low-hanging fruit? What are our more medium-term ones? And what are our stretch, long-term ones as well? So that's generally how we work. And then you can go around to some SMART objectives as well. That works with some coaches. It doesn't work with others. It depends on the objective as well. But that's how I generally work. A broad goal, and then splitting it down into smaller goals, stroke objectives that hang off that. And that seems to work.
I found that sometimes goals aren't that clear, or it's difficult to start with them for some of my coachees. So we start with what has brought them in terms of discomfort or things they want to change or challenge that they've met, and a goal feels a bit like you're aiming already for a solution, but sometimes they're not there yet. And I recognize myself in that. Usually by the time I have a goal, the plan sort of like falls into place, and I wouldn't really need coaching for that. But where I've needed coaching myself, and where I find it, some of my coaches also needing coaching for, is to clarify from this feeling of like, oh, now is not right, what should I do, to sort of get to defining, okay, so what would be right. And so the way I've done it for myself starts usually with a little bit of introspection and looking at my values, but sometimes it doesn't sound as grandiose. It's more like when I'm happy, what are the circumstances? What makes me happy? What gives me energy? Where are the moments or the types of activities where I want to go to and I'm naturally drawn to because I get some kind of fulfillment? And then from looking at those things, and sometimes it might be trivial, big, small, over a long stretch of time, or just an event, a memory, I try to find commonalities, and then they gradually crystallize into maybe a value or just something positive that I want to aim for. It's not quite yet a solution, but it's kind of getting me out of the, I don't feel in the right place right now. And as I've become a bit more self-aware, I kind of get those various bits to align into a direction that feels right for me. And then as I refine this alignment, then it's a lot easier for me for that virtual line to point at something, and then I can get to a goal from there. And so that's where, from intuitions of things that kind of come into alignment, I can get into a visualization bit. And when we talk about goal setting, very often that idea of visualizing what good will be. So what will you see? What will you feel? What will you have? All of these things that bring to your brain all the good things that you want to have into your visualization. And by putting it into words, it almost creates a form of reality in your mind. And so once you've got there, then you've got a bit more of a goal and a bit more specific. But and then for me, then the plan falls into place, or you can go through the steps that Jon described. But I have found that for probably at least half of the people that have come to me for coaching, it was actually just a more of a negative feeling and an uncertainty as to what to do that brought them to coaching, rather than that, I've got this goal and I don't know how. So it was more the what to aim for rather than the how to get there.
When we have set goals, as in that they've generally been quite broad, like I said, career, something in at home or what it might be. But once the goals have been set, so if we're talking purely about the GROW model, that's the laser focus right from the start, isn't it? So once goals have been set, I've discovered that's when when they've been explored slightly, and we've had a follow-up session, that is when I've started to find the underlying behaviours and mindsets that have restricted coachees from doing something before, or something from their past that has, caused this mindset. I'm scared about that. There's anxiety here, whatever it might be, and that's where I found it quite interesting how we have set them out, sometimes quite easily, Agnes. I hearing what you're saying, but then once we're getting down that track a little bit, some of these steps, some of these milestones, that's where the conversation begins, and we start to explore a little bit more. And then you can say, okay, let's look to the past, let's see where this has come from, but obviously with one eye on the future. So yeah, I see how you've been working, but it's kind of been a reverse sometimes on some of my coaches.
That's interesting. One of the things that I've noticed over the time is that it's really easy to become so focused on the goal. And often, for me anyway, sort of in the back of my mind, it's been a bit of a something that's kind of distracting, because I'm thinking, well, I must do this, have to achieve this sort of goal. And actually, I've found that as long as you don't let things run away too much in terms of conversation, as that conversation goes, people then start to find, okay, this is where I want to go. They know there's sort of a gut feeling there isn't something quite right, but as they start vocalizing and feel they're definitely being listened to, naturally goals begin to come up. And my role is to help crystallize those and be an accountable person for them to speak to and to achieve them. I think that often, once people know it, there isn't so much, certainly I found, there isn't, or rather it's quite rare, where I'm having to really keep going on at people, because they actually do want to progress. And the power is the active listening again. So the question I would have for each of you is, how has coaching impacted your own life, both as being a coachee, but what I'm more interested in is being a coach. How has that affected the way you do things, how you see life in general, perhaps how you interact with others?
As a coachee, again, it was to help me regain alignment where I got confused sometimes, and most recently it was around career and jobs and things like that. But as a coach, I think there's an application in my work. So as a line manager, but actually in any and every conversation that I'm involved in, just practicing that skill of listening, of holding back my inner voices of questions, or coming with a clear purpose to conversations. Am I going to go to get information out of the others and or facilitate conversations or facilitate dialogue, or actually am I coming as a participant and I've got a point to make? And having that clarity, whether I'm going to go with my coaching skills or not, and practicing that has been quite helpful. In terms of line management, it's really great to consciously go into, now I'm going to do a little bit of coaching with that person and see how powerful that is in terms of the person receiving or getting into the coaching with me, feeling empowered, bringing me solutions, and then getting really keen to show me more. And then as a line manager, you're kind of like, great, I haven't had to even point the direction. I've just asked you, where do you want to go? And off you go. So it's great as a line manager to have that. And in my personal life, again, I don't coach at home or with friends, but it's always helpful to again practice those skills in a very different way, and make that decision. It just widens my range. It's like it's like playing lots of instruments or going into jazz, and then suddenly, instead of going to following a particular part of music, you're sort of improvising and using all your skills. And because I feel that I'm mastering gradually a little bit more some of them, then I can involve them into conversations. So conversations with friends or with my family just become richer, because I'm a better listener through having practiced different ways of listening, and I feel more expert in a way in things that work perfectly fine when with your sort of natural abilities, but with the enhancement of the focus on coaching, I do think that is even greater. I just feel that I can. It's richer conversation, richer listening that goes on.
Yeah, I'd certainly say that I read something at the start of the coaching journey, which is something about a coaching mindset. And at the time, I was a bit new to coaching, a little bit suspicious of it all. A lot of big words. But I'd look back now and say, it is that coaching mindset that you're kind of saying there, Agnes, in terms of it applies now throughout my life. So one thing I notice at work and with colleagues, you can see who has that coaching mindset, who does that active listening, who gives people the time to think and just then come out with what they want to say without too much prompting. And and these aren't trained coaches, but you can just see where they're good at it, and that's really good to see people along that line. In my work life now, I would say I always give that few seconds just to think about it before I respond, and that comes with time, that comes with experience, obviously. But going through coaching now, and the experience getting from it, just thinking, just having that pause yourself before you splurt out a load of rubbish or whatever it might be. But no, actually having that few seconds to think and analyze what's going on, see what the other person has said or people have said, and then thinking about those powerful questions as well. What can you answer? You obviously analyze the situation, but can you use an open question to elicit the to get where you need to go. So it's been extremely useful in that. And I do see myself as a coach now, and some people are like, oh, a coach, I do, and it's that sort of I am proud, I would say, of that, and the things that we have learned, and it's been really good. We've got a very good community at work of people all in the same boat on the journey, and so it's been really good to explore with them and just talk openly like here about how it has affected us and the good things it is. And at home as well, with two young children, only one that can talk, they're listening to him, just paraphrasing, they doesn't quite get it all the time, but just trying to guide them with that as well, and just so I can use some of the skills that I've had with the children. It's been quite useful throughout my work and home.
It's a great topic of conversation as well, and maybe I've only tried it with friends, and so there's what I like. They're an easy crowd. They're more likely to be interested in. But because it's all about relationship with people, and we all have a bit of that in our lives, it's quite easy to talk about it and get people interested as well. And sometimes I've had conversations outside of work, but people interested as to how it works in the business world and how to use that. Or sometimes it's sort of brought on with talking about a TV series and like, oh, is this person actually a coach? Like, is this what you do? And then you kind of go with that and discuss they're probably actually quite true, and they are applying the grow model here, or it's active coaching, or no, this is mentoring now, it's not coaching, it's mentoring. you kind of play with that, and even as a topic of conversation, not just how you do it, but actually the subject. I found that it's something that people are quite keen to have a conversation about, so it's great for that too.
I must say, though, I've had the privilege to observe both of you in terms of coaching, and I'm not after money, but you both are very, very good. I think you definitely have a heart and a very genuine, very authentic in the way that you listen to people and support them in terms of making progress. So, big up you guys, as they say, for what you do. So one of the things that I hear people sort of refer to is coaching style. What does that mean? I mean, does it mean anything to you individually? How would you go about describing if you have a style and what that style is?
I think that does come with time, because I think everyone that comes into coaching likes people. They like to listen to people. That's obviously a good start. But more importantly, they want to help people. And one thing that you do need to learn early on is and as Agnes mentioned, mentoring, the difference between the coaching and mentoring, the not guiding people or leading them a certain way. And that is one of the fundamentals that you have to start right. So your style has to be a coach. You can't delve into mentoring. One thing that I would say, I'm happy to challenge people, because I think in coaching there's times where people need to be challenged. To think about things, and sometimes in some uncomfortable areas that they do not want to talk about, and there's ways of doing that. But I'm quite upfront with my coaches in the chemistry session. I say, I will challenge you if need be. Obviously, you can, you don't have to answer anything, but at certain times I will challenge. So I try and say that up front that, this is, even though I'll be listening to the coachee and, it's all about them, I am here as an active part of the conversation. So I don't know if there's such a thing as a challenging coach, as in, I'm not challenging, hopefully, but in terms of challenging them, in terms of the response they might have. But that's what I say, and that comes with time and confidence and coaching, various people. Your style comes. You start off with models thinking, right, let's go for the GROW model, GROW, get to there, the end, and then you're done. Whereas naturally, you come through after a few months, as you carry on, you think, actually, that's not working. Let's give people more space. Let's not think about these goals or the objectives straight away. Let's dance around, have a bit of dance of insight, whatever it might be, and you end up just as I've seen it. You look at all the different models, and then each session is different. You go in not with a happy-go-lucky approach. You say we'd like to get some objectives or goals at some point, and then you kind of see how it goes. But I'm always upfront about the challenging, and perhaps that there will be some questions around it that that will come up.
The coaching style for me is kind of an outcome, not necessarily something that you start. You don't necessarily start with that in mind of, I'm going to be a coach of that particular ilk. Firstly, because yes, you kind of have to try different things and get experienced with the variety of things. And so over time, you might feel that some ways or methods or approaches that are fit more with who you are as a person, and so it becomes your default mode. But I think through coaching, you have to do quite a little bit of work on self-awareness, partly to sort of make sure, back to the active listening, that you're not bringing too much of you in the conversation, and you're not applying too many filters onto expressions or words that the coachee may be used that are actually only filters that work for you. So and we all use the same language, but a same word might mean different things or evoke different things to people. So you have to work into that self-awareness, and as you do that, you might then step back from how it is that you're coaching and say, oh, actually, it looks like this is my style. And just like for any piece of self-awareness, you can do a good job of introspection, but actually it's by contrast that it will be easier to establish what it is. So what we do very often with other coaches is either get supervision, so you reflect on what it is that you do, or talk amongst coaches around your practice, and so the self-reflection becomes shared, and it's through listening to how other people do it, or when you sort of do a bit of practice with one another coach, that you can say, oh, so they do it this way. This is not the way that I would do it, but we kind of all get to doing coaching, but we do it in different ways. So their style is this and my style is that. So for me, I'm still kind of working out how I'm going to articulate it. My style is probably there, but it's through this reflection on what it is that I do, and maybe this contrast with other people who are doing coaching, that I'll probably be able to say, well, my style of coaching is X. At the moment, I haven't got quite there yet in terms of bringing it to my consciousness, but it must be there in some ways already, I presume.
I'd agree in terms of the observing other coaches as well, and that gave me a lot of insight into, like you say, someone does it like that, and you think, okay, that's interesting. But you say we're learning every single session we have, every single observation we do, every bit of information that we watch on YouTube or read an article, that adds to you just questioning it. And like I say, it's self-awareness and the idea that you're a coach right now, but you can always improve. And exactly the same as a coachee, you're looking at the past, but you also look at the future. What can the future Agnes or John be, or Mark? What can bring out the best in us and help us to help the coachee more. And as I say, I think it's that the styles will change with the more experience we have and the more things we read. But yeah, it certainly is an ongoing process.
Thank you. I think you've both really explained it well there. And for me, one of the keys is just being authentic. And as you quite rightly say, you're continually learning. However long you've been doing this, it's a continuous journey, continually learning. And that's what makes someone a good coach, being themselves and being open to ideas. Now, I'm conscious of time, and we have got some really important other things to ask. Before we move on, can one of you just quickly summarize what chemistry session is? Because I'm aware there will be people listening to this, perhaps no background in coaching, thinking chemistry session, what's all that about then?
Okay, so a chemistry session is, I've always thought it was a little bit strange. It's called a chemistry session, but anyway, that's what I always go with, and I always apologise for using it. So a chemistry session is essentially a meeting. So you have a prospective coachee, and you then arrange a meeting, sometimes shorter than a usual coaching session, just to really have a chat about what coaching is and what it isn't. The coachee can, tell them what areas they would like to talk about. You have a conversation, you listen. Sometimes perhaps you'll speak more as the coach as you would in a usual session, because you're explaining a bit more, talking about the contract, etc. And after that, you just lay the parameters down. This is generally what coaching will be like. This is the sort of things that we'll be doing. You'll get a feel for each other, seeing if it's something they want to progress with. You'll lay the rules down. You don't have to continue. You can find another coach, etc. So at the end of it, you have an idea what coaching is, who the other person is, who the coach is as well. And then when you progress, you're not going straight into a session without that work beforehand.
That's great, thank you. So one of the things that we do on the podcast is ask people for their fave five, and that's kind of a nod and a wink to Brené Brown, who does her mixtape and, of course, Desert Island Discs. But before we go on to that, I want to ask each of you, could you share with me an interesting fact about yourself that you're most proud of?
All right, yeah, so, I completed my master's, I think it was 14 years ago now, while working at the time, so full-time work doing my master's in history, which I was very proud of. But interestingly, I won £2,800 on the lottery, which I put towards the master. It was only £3,000 a year at the time, back before the tuition fees went up. And when I tell people to this day, they still, a lot of people, maybe not our work, but they're like, you spent £3,000 that you won on a master's? And my answer is yes, I did, and it was the best thing I ever did. But anyway,
good for you. Good for you. Value of education.
So a little fact that I'm sort of proud of. Some time ago, before having children, I got into cycling on a whim a little bit, and so I had a friend who dared me to make a New Year's resolution to get into cycling. So towards the end of December, and I signed up to a challenge that would happen in the summer. And so I, on the January sale, so towards late January, I bought my first road bike. I knew how to cycle, but I had never had a road bike. And so I got into road cycling, like long distance. And the challenge came in July, and so I did it. And that challenge is called the London, Edinburgh, London. So that gives you an idea of what it's about. And you have to do it in 5 days. And so from late January until late July was sort of my training period, and I did it, and it was amazing and fun and fantastic. And I no longer cycle now because too busy with babies, but I'm proud that I did it. Not so much that it's cycling, but it was kind of like, it doesn't matter if you're a newbie at something. You know, as long as you're having fun and that's what you want to do, you can do it. You don't have to be special in any ways. We're all special in all kinds of ways. So yeah, that's kind of my fun fact / proud moment.
Each of you, favorite song or piece of music, and why?
All right, so mine is Caribbean Blue by Enya. And it's a lovely tune, and it's I don't know when I first listened to it. It was a long time ago, and I was going through some angst at the time. Don't know how to say. It was just a lovely tune, and I've always liked it ever since.
So the one I'm going to pick is going to tick off a couple of the fives, because it's going to do for the book / film, and actually book and film and song into one. So the song is called Miss Silly's Blues. And it's a song that was written by Quincy Jones for the movie The Color Purple, which is also adapted from a great book, The Color Purple, by Alice Walker, and the movie is Steven Spielberg. And the reason why I love these three things is, so The Color Purple, the movie, was a movie that I've watched many times throughout my childhood on VHS, dubbed in French, because I was in France by then, but really loved it. Spielberg is, you know, even as a child, very compelling visually and humorous and so on. The story is really intense, but you can take it in lighter shades of intensity to connect with it. The book is really well written as well, and catches you, or it did catch me. And part of the stories that I'm attracted to is the relationship between two sisters. It's also kind of a feminist book. So I'm now an expat. And so my sister lives in France, and we're still very close, and we've gone through a lot as children and teenagers. Nothing quite as intense as the book, but still. And the day of my wedding, my sister did a speech, which was fantastic and very moving, and she played that tune, and I hadn't heard it for a long time, and immediately as she played it, we welled up. The whole place started being very emotional, and so I joined her, and we danced to the tune of Miss Silly's Blues together. So it's kind of a, sorry, I keep going on, but it starts with, it's kind of a moaning blues. So it starts with, and then the words kind of come, and the song is about, you know, life can get tough at times, but don't worry, you're strong, you can do it. You just have to shake your shimmy, and you'll kind of be there. And I'm your sister, and I'm here for you. And I thought, oh, it's great. So I listen to it every now and then just to bring back the memories of the wedding, but just for my sister, and for the beauty of that message really echoes with me. There you go.
Thank you. And so clearly those songs have something significant to you for your past history and so on. So next question, and I'll ask you first then, Jon. Who is one of your heroes or people you most admire?
So this is always a tough one, because there's not a lot around nowadays, I always say. So I'll delve back into history. And I remember my A-level history a long time ago now. And one Sir Robert Peel, 19th century Prime Minister, and a great statesman, I would say, and someone that put country over party, which I would suggest we need a lot more of nowadays.
Wow. So equally, I struggle with the pick just one, and for me, I'll just go on the people I admire. And they are the ones that I select to keep close to me in my life. So you know, my husband and my friends, and they all have individual characteristics that I refer to at different times in my life. So very often at work, when I'm looking for inspiration, I think, what would Ola do in this situation? And sort of I picture her, and then the solution comes, because she's the type of professional woman that I want to, like I aspire to be, or then it will be, oh, what would Caroline do, or what would Will do? And so I've got my heroes, and I keep them close to me.
Really, really important question now, something very close to my heart. Food.
Now, I was trying to think of what I like, and I wrote down straight away chicken. Any sort of chicken. Breaded chicken, fried chicken, chicken wings done in any sort of way, unseasoned chicken, just throw it my way, I'll eat it.
As long as it's cooked.
Oh, of course, yeah. That is the one thing that must remain constant. Yeah.
Brilliant. I love seafood. Seafood for me is happy memories of holiday. So as a child, we would always go and visit my grandparents on the west coast of France and have piles of mussels and oysters and all kinds of seafood. So give me a seafood platter and I'll be very happy.
Excuse the pun, but place, not a fish, but place. Jon, where would you choose?
So mine is the Causeway in Gomanchester, which was the town of when I lived for many years and still frequent. My mum and dad live there, and it's at the riverside there, and have spent many a happy time over there. And the sort of place that I think, when the time comes, my ashes should be spread there. Hopefully, in the distant future.
I'll follow the thread of the seafood and choose La Rochelle, which is where my grandparents used to live on the west coast of France. Very beautiful city. And off La Rochelle, you've got Ile de Ré, which is a very long island, like a stretch, very sandy. And so that's where we would cycle to, and then cycle on the island to go as far as possible and play in the waves and so on. So I love La Rochelle and I love the Ile de Ré. That's where I would go back to any day.
Fantastic, thank you. So, Jon, book, film, or video game, or all three?
I just went with because books. As a student of history, I don't often read anything apart from history books, and they can be kind of. I find them interesting, but many do not. And so I decided to go for a film. And as a child of the 80s, Arnie was a big part of my growing up, so it has to be the jungle film Predator, which I've watched numerous times, probably too many to count, and I will watch time and time again.
It's your go-to.
It is indeed, yeah. Who doesn't mind being hunted by a alien?
So I think, Agnes, because you've already said those three, I can't really ask that question other than clearly you're a gamer. So do you have a video game that you like?
Am I a gamer? No, I'm afraid my husband is the gamer in the family, but at the moment my games are actually with a 4-year-old and a not quite 2-year-old, so I'm afraid no video games from me. Sorry.
Well, look, both of you, thank you very much for giving up your time and being on the podcast. Really, really appreciate it. Is there anything either of you want to say before we wrap up?
Just a big thank you for having us, Mark.
No problem.
Very
much. Been a great conversation.
Been a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the podcast. Until next time, remember, help people feel valued. Listen, don't just hear.